Afternoon, everybody. I think it is time to continue the afternoon sessions. So I'm not sure if the first presenter is here. Faisal Adams from Ghana. Okay, nice to see you. Okay, so I think we will not to lose too much time. We will directly start with a presentation on crop livestock integration in urban agriculture in Ghana. The floor is yours, and I will have the cards. So five minutes, it's green, 3 minutes left, yellow, and when you are at the end of 10 minutes, then you will get the red card. Right. But I'm optimistic that all presenters will keep the time schedule. Right. Okay.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to you all. My name is Faisal Adams, and I'm presenting on crop livestock integration in urban agriculture, implication for urban food security in Ghana. Yeah, so this is the outline. When you look at food insecurity, especially in urban areas in sub-Saharan Africa, is becoming a topical issue, basically due to rise in urban population. Data has shown that the urban population in sub-Saharan Africa is likely to increase from 37 million to over 1.2 billion. And in Ghana, about 60% of the population dwells in urban communities. Already in urban areas, there are concerns of food insecurity due to poverty, limited access to resources, vulnerability to climate change and urbanization. And this is further worsened by COVID-19. The food security of the people, especially in urban areas, has already been tempered by COVID-19. When you look at the urban communities, especially in developing economies, realize that they spend about 50 to 70% of their income on food purchases. As a result, they become vulnerable to price hikes and fluctuations. And most urban communities then depend on formal food supply chains for their food. And most of these formal food supply chains comes with high transaction costs, hikes in food price, and most of them are also, again, inaccessible to the urban poor. For the urban poor, they normally depend on the informal food networks, such as urban agriculture, to get food for their family. Already, studies have shown a positive impact of urban agriculture in urban livelihoods. However, there are limited studies on the implications of integrated urban crop livestock farming on households' livelihoods. Meanwhile, studies have shown that once we practice integrated crop livestock, it leads to lower cost of inputs used by farmers. It also helps to increase crop and livestock productivity due to the symbiotic relationship that exists between crops and livestock. Again, there is limited use of synthetic pesticides and other fertilizers because the droppings of the animals are used to fertilize crop and the vice versa. So the aim of this study was basically to look at the drivers of food security, and again, assess the impact of ICL, that is integrated crop livestock, on the food security of urban households in Kumasi. So the study was carried out at Kumasi Metropolis, which happens to be the second most populous city in Ghana. We used the descriptive survey design, which is based on quantitative approach. Our questionnaire was pre-tested before it was administered. Now, the sample size, we sampled 400 farmers from using the Yamin's formula from a population of over 400,000 households in Kumasi. But the 400 was adjusted to 430 households. We use the two-stage sampling technique in selecting our farmers. First, in stage one, we use the purposive sampling technique to select 5 metros from the city. And then in stage 2, we applied the simple random selection to select 200 non-farm residents and then 230 farming households. Now, the data was analyzed using descriptive statistics, and then we use the simile unrelated regression model to assess the drivers of food security. And then we use the inverse probability weighted adjusted regression, and then PSM, that's propensity score matching for the impact analysis. Now, for food security, we use 2 proxies. That is the household food insecurity assess scale, and then we use the household dietary diversity scale. The high-fives look at food access, and then the HDDS look at the utilization and nutrition aspect. Now, for this similar unrelated regression model, the reason why we used it is the fact that these 2 household food security proxies, the data was collected from the same responders. So there is the potential of cross-correlation among the residuals that will be estimated. And the similar unrelated regression model has the ability to correct this correlation that exists between the dependent variables. Now, this is the April expectation, the table, the variables that we pick data on. Now, for the IPWRA, we use it to correct selection bias problem because of non-random assignment of the respondents. And we use it again because the estimates are quite robust. It's able to estimate concurrently the selection and the outcome models or equations. And again, in the model, you only need to specify one of the equations correctly, and the model will be able to give you robust estimates. So we use the average treatment of the treated within the sample to estimate the impact. Now, at our results, this is what we found. We first look at the food security status of the people, the sample that we took. And it shows that households who practice integrated crop livestock tend to be more food secured in terms of access, in terms of getting access to food, followed by crop households, those who are into only crop, and then followed by no farm, and livestock tend to be least food secured in terms of access. Then we looked at the dietary diversity. Again, households into integrated crop livestock tend to be more diversified in terms of their diet, and followed by crop, and again, followed by no farm, and then livestock. Seems like the livestock households are performing poorly in terms of food security. So this is a table that shows the various variables that were used in the SAR model, that's the similar unrelated regression model. And you can see that the sample is dominated by males who are married, and again, with Christianity religious background, and they are more located within the urban area compared to the peri-urban area. And most of them engage in private non-salary works. So these are other variables description here. They were used inside the model. Now we looked at the drivers of food security among the different categories of farmers that we looked at: non-farm, crops only, livestock only, and the integrated livestock. And for example, sex is only significant in the crops only, which denotes that females compared to males are likely to be food insecure. You know, the high fives, if you understand how it's being measured, the higher it is, the higher score you get, means that you are being insecure. So the negatives, all the negatives denotes that it has negative effect on food security. Then, so these are categorical variables, and then we look at some continuous variables as well. So for example, household size is positive, and it also denotes that higher family size leads to higher food insecurity, especially for households who are not into urban agriculture. So, but importantly, you realize that household income is significant across all the 4 categories of farmers that we looked at. And it denotes that once a household is able to increase his or her income, it tends to lessen food insecurity in terms of access. So then we, again, but for the SAR model, before you can use it and produce coefficients which are more reliable, you have to do what we term as a test of cross-correlation. And then we tested this by estimating the Brush-Pagan test, and which is significant, and which denotes that there are some cross-correlation between the residuals of the various model, which was corrected by the model. Now we look at dietary diversity. Again, they are determinants, and the results is similar to whatever we found in the food assets. Again, sex is significant. And then, so we have the impact, which is the last one. What our results shows that integrated livestock really has no impact on food security when it comes to the various crops, but for households who are not into urban agriculture, integrated crop livestock was significant. And then when you come to the dietary diversity, it shows that integrated crop livestock farmers really have a higher, or the impact is positive compared to all the categories of farmers. So we don't have, and then the PSM also supports whatever we found with the IPWRA. Our conclusions are that income, it has policy implications. So we have to look at urban agriculture as a source of income generation. And then there is also to support the hypothesis that practicing integrated livestock production really has a positive impact on urban food security. Thank you very much.
Very much for the presentation. Are there questions? Yes, please. Please always mention your name and institution before putting your question.
Sorry. Thank you. My name is Iman Odonko. I'm affiliated with Justus Liebig University in Gießen. Please, thank you very much for this wonderful presentation. And I have one question. I'm just wondering, considering the rapid rate of urbanization and the demand for land in Kumasi, I'm just wondering how sustainable is the livestock crop integration system? How sustainable is it?
Right. Yes, it's true that there's urbanization ongoing, especially in Kumasi. But what we realized was that some of these animals, maybe let me say urban agriculture in general, are being carried out on communal lands and sometimes in compounds, okay, of some of these farmers. So once we realize that, especially in most impoverished communities, once we realize that urban agriculture and livestock tend to have some impact on their food security, maybe urban planners can factor this system of agriculture again, just like we're having in developed economies where crops are being planted on rooftop. I think it was a policy that was adopted, and we are where we are today. Yeah, so my mentor is here. Maybe he may want to add something. We did a work together.
All right, thank you very much. So my name is Robert Edu from the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. So just to contribute to what he said to the question that was asked, we are looking at micro livestock as well. So rabbits and these small ruminants can be raised at the backyard. And then we'll look at some receptacles that can be used to produce vegetables and all that, so that there's that integration going on. So I think it is possible in the face of the challenges. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Shahin Alam, PhD candidate from University of Kassel and Göttingen. In your slide 12, I found that the crop, you have classified the crop and livestock, and again the crop. So how you have classified those things in your slide 12?
I don't know if you can repeat yourself because I didn't hear you well. Can you repeat the question again?
Could you go to the slide 12?
12, okay.
Yes, 12.
Right.
One more back, please. Previous one. Previous one.
Previous one?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, here. Okay, it's fine.
This 11.
So, crop and livestock, and again, in third one, crop and livestock. So it's kind of mix up, right? Crop and livestock, then livestock, and again crop. So
yeah,
how
so
you
we
classify-
disaggregate the data into four categories of farmers. Integrated, those who do crop and livestock together, those who do only crop, those who do only livestock, and those who are not engaged in any form of urban agriculture.
Thank you.
Right.
I think due to the time, unfortunately, so since there are some online questions, we will have one question from the online listeners, and then unfortunately we have to move to the next presenter. Okay. So maybe I take the first one. So the question is, what are the key drivers and motivations for crop livestock integration in urban agriculture in Ghana?
Right. I think the model that we ran basically, let me see. Can you move it?
Quick answer, please.
It's not moving. But income is one of them. Yeah, income. All right. Let me look at them. Yeah. So income, and then food security. So yeah, to secure their food security and other factors really drive a lot of urban households to go into integrated crop livestock in Ghana.
Thank you very much again for the presentation and the answers. The next presenter will present online. It's Kojo Medenu from Benin. I hope you have it online. Maybe Kojo, can you please share your screen? Is it possible? Kojo, can you please try to share your screen? You are muted.
Okay.
Now we hear you.
Yeah, but it is not possible. I don't have possibility to share my screen. It is, I didn't see why to share it.
Can you try it again?
Okay, it is better now. Okay, it is better now.
Okay, now we see the full screen. So the floor is yours. I don't know. I will remind you if there are 3 minutes left for your presentation. Okay, so the floor is yours, please.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kojo Medenu. I'm a PhD student at University of Abomey-Calavi in Benin. And my topic today is diversity of sheep farming system in the urban and peri-urban areas of southern Benin. So I will present my methodological approach, present the result, and finish with the conclusion. So, in developing country, especially the country from West Africa, livestock farming is very important, and especially due to the rising demands, due also to the rising demography in these countries. But we have a lot of type of peri-urban or urban livestock production system. But most of the time they focus on dairy system or monogastric production system at the expense of small ruminant system. So the objective of these studies is to investigate the sheep production system in urban and peri-urban area in southern Benin. So the study areas are the main cities in southern Cotonou and Port Novo, and these areas are the major zones for sheep fattening in southern Benin. So to carry out our study, we have surveyed 107 farmers with a question about socioeconomical characteristic and the production system characteristic. So for the data analysis, we have present qualitative variables with frequencies and quantitative variables with median. So we have made a comparison between location, urban versus peri-urban. And finally, we have established a typology. And for that, we have used multiple correspondence analysis followed by HCPC analysis. So first of all, we can say that this activity is men-oriented. So most of the farmers are men. It is in contrast with goat keeping in rural area where some studies found that most of the farmers were women. About production of the objective, we can say that most of the farmers they did this activity for money, for income generation for money. But we can notice that in urban area, farmers also they do it for home consumption. So that is a particular thing to take into account. For main occupation, you can see that in urban areas, a big part of the farmers are traders. So it means that they have a diversified profiles throughout the study areas. About the management practice, mainly the farm in urban areas, the animals are kept in permanent enclosure and the main feeding system is zero grazing. It is in contrast with what we have in peri-urban areas where most of the animals are kept in semi-enclosure or even they don't have enclosure and the main feeding system is grazing. For typology, we have used three criteria, three variables, the type of enclosure, the type of fattening units, and the proportion of rams. And we can see on the screen, there is some type of farm types. So we have this one is, the first one on the left is a type of extensive farm. And for that, it is a breeding and fattening farm, but most of the animals here are female. So the extensive farm, breeding fattening farm, they didn't keep a lot of rams. So we have in the middle, we have just a type of semi-intensive breeding fattening farm where there is female, but they are kept in enclosure and in good, relatively good condition, better than in expensive system. And on the right images photo, you can see this one is the specialized farm. So it is an intensive fattening farm where they only keep rams. So there is no female. But we can see this kind of things also in other semi-intensive farms. So the image is just to show some type of a farm we have identified. So about the management practices of this farm, we can notice that most of the extensive farm, they didn't purchase forage, they didn't use unformulated feed, and they rely a lot on family workforce. What in contrast with semi-intensive farm or intensive farm, where they use a lot of they purchase forage because most of them they are in urban areas and they use concentrates. But we can see that for vaccination, most of the intensive farm they don't vaccinate the animal because of the short period to keep the rams. So they just keep the rams for fattening just for a short period. But in contrast with the extensive farm where they are in, most of them, they are in breeding and fattening system. So they keep the animals for a long time. So they need to vaccinate them. About the manual management, most of the intensive farm, they have a big problem to valorize the manual. So you can see that on the right, most of them, they didn't valorize manual. And it's in contrast with intensive farm. They use it for fertilization. they valorize it also. And so most of these farm, extensive farm in urban area, they have maybe some kind of relationship with crop farming in urban area or maybe in peri-urban area to use it, or maybe they can use it for themselves also. So here we can see that most of the intensive farm, they are very specialized, so they have very weak integration with crop farming to valorize the manure. In conclusion, we can see that from urban to peri-urban, we have different type of practices, and it is a very well developed activities in urban area, and it is also an important economic activities. But we have also to consider the non-economic objectivity like home consumption. But we need to focus on environmental issues due to the mismanagement of manure in urban context. Thank you. Am I at the end of my presentation?
Very much for keeping very much the time. So there is now a bit more time for questions. So I see the first hand raised.
Yes, Kojo, thank you so much for the presentation. There was one slide that was showing the management practices, and I saw formulation of own feed and also purchase of forage. I was wondering, don't you have a situation where the same farmer will sometimes purchase and also formulate feed? I was looking at some integrated. So it appears you are either purchasing or you are formulating, and I'm not sure practically that usually happens across the board. Can you comment on that?
Actually, I didn't get the question. If you can, could you repeat it, please?
Kojo, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
So there's a situation where somebody is purchasing forage and also formulating own feed. I was looking for options where they will purchase sometimes and also formulate sometimes. That percentage is not shown anywhere, but I think practically that will be the most common approach. What do you say to that?
Okay. But actually, most of them they use both approach. But there are some farm when they are maybe in peri-urban areas, they don't need to purchase forage because they have some grazing and they can just go there and get forage. But for farmers in urban area, due to the regulation and other things, they need to collect forage, or maybe there is a evaluation with some collectors specialized with that for that. But when for farmers who formulated feeds, it is more when they want to fatten animals. So when especially when it is close to the period of Eid al-Fitr feast, this Muslim feast. So they need to fatten the animals. So they need to formulate the feed. So it is use of concentrates. If the commercial concentrate is not affordable for them, they need to formulate themselves their own feed. I don't know if I answered your question.
It's fine. I just suggest that maybe next time you can separate them so that we have those who solely will purchase forage, those who solely will formulate, and those who use purchase plus formulation so that we know clearly the proportions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Niels?
Yes, thank you very much. Very interesting. I would like to hear your view on who is especially interested in typologies like this. What can we or the people in Benin learn out of this? Does it have any consequences? Thanks very much.
Okay. For this typology, I think we are looking for to further our research, especially about the economic objective. So we need to separate when they are in extensive system and when they are in intensive system, what is the real objective? Because we notice that most of the farmers in urban areas, they are traders. So it means that they have money. Maybe they want just to save money, but money is not the first priority. So they have a logical, they have an economical logic behind this activity. So to look further, we need to typify, to separate according to some variables. So the farmers who share maybe the same characteristic, we can look further. Apart from that, we look for also to see the environmental issues, because we notice that for intensive farm, they have a huge maybe environmental footprint, especially with regarding the mismanagement of water. So there is a weak integration with crop farming in urban area. So it is very important to note that this kind system, they have this kind of problem, and we have to look for solution for that. And maybe for extensive system, maybe they have other type of problem, and we can look for suggestion to them also. So that is where the apology is very important.
Thank you. Is there another question from the listeners here in presence? Yes, please.
Also, thank you from my side. I'm just wondering on this slide, how comes that the intensive systems purchase a lot of formulated or concentrate feeds, but they disadopt or they do not adopt vaccinations? Isn't that a complementary technology or innovation?
Yeah, I said when I said that most of the farming intensive system, they are fattening system. So they kept a lot of rams instead of a lot of maybe female. So the keeping period is very short, because most of the time they just keep it for aided feed, the Muslim feast. So they keep it for a very short period, maybe 5 or 4 months, just for fattening. So they don't need to vaccinate the animals. It is for them, it is just a waste of money. But for those in the extensive system, most of them, they are in the breeding system. It means that they keep a lot of females. And these females, they can stay on the farm for 1 year, 2 years, or maybe 3 years. So for sustainability, they need to vaccinate these animals. So I don't know if you get my point.
Yeah, I get it. It's very interesting.
Thank you.
Very much. I will just check online if there is no, this was related all to the last question, and maybe a very brief answer. How do urban and peri-urban sheep farming systems interact with other agricultural and non-agricultural activities in these areas?
Okay. What I can say is for other agricultural activities, I can say that there is a recycling system. So most of them, they just sell the manure, and that's one example. They just sell the manure for crop farmers. But also for non-agricultural activities, we can notice that most of the farmers in urban area, they are traders. So it means that they earn money from trading, and they invest in animal keeping. So that's what I can say about interaction, yeah, like briefly. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. Again, applause. We will now move on to the next presenter, to another system, silvopastoral systems, and another continent, from West Africa to Nicaragua. Ryan, the floor is yours. Maybe.
Yes, hello, good afternoon to all of you. As Regina already mentioned, we're changing systems from urban, peri-urban to silvopastoral, and also continents from West Africa to Central America. My name is Rijn van der Hoek. In fact, I'm based in West Africa now, in Senegal, but I used to be based in Central America. I'm working with the Alliance of Biodiversity International and SIAD. Okay, so I'm going to give a short presentation about the feasibility of improved silvopastoral systems in the Caribbean region of Nicaragua. This was based, the study was asked or was requested by FAO in conjunction with the Nicaraguan government to do an analysis comparing business as usual and improved silvopastoral system scenarios. The analysis was done with small and medium livestock farms in buffer zones in two natural reserves in Nicaragua. The one you can see on the map in the north, which is the Bosavas region, and in the south is the Indio Maiz reserve. Anyway, for the total, the region as such, the Caribbean region of Nicaragua is very important for livestock production. It houses, it's almost half of the cattle population of Nicaragua can be found there. And in this specific areas, we talk about 25% of the national herd. Most farmers possess cattle, but they have poor market access. So we see here inadequate land use and management practices. Livestock productivity is low, and then we talk like 400 or 500 liters per animal per year when we talk about dairy. The environmental impacts are high, poor resilience to drought, even in the relatively wet Caribbean area. There are also drought problems, dry periods, and of course, there's a high vulnerability to change. Okay. So what we did a characterization of the livestock farms. We identified the constraints. We did a cost estimation of the different possible interventions related to silvopastoral systems or improved silvopastoral systems. We used for the biophysical, environmental, and the climate impacts, we used an tool, an ex-ante assessment tool, which is called CLEANed, which is a tool developed by ILRI and SIAD to do an impact assessments on farm level. And we looked at the nitrogen balance, land and water requirements, greenhouse gas emissions, and carbon stock changes. We looked also at the economic impacts, because we talk about feasibility, and then we cannot only look at the biophysical aspects, of course, we also need to look at the economic ones. So we looked at the net income from livestock production and the cost of the different systems, the internal rate of return, payback period, and our starting point was an investment life of 12 years. We did also a sensitivity analysis. So main sources were the secondary literature, the census, and we also had focus group discussions and individual interviews with farmers. Okay. So what are improved silvopastoral systems? Well, there are different ways you can improve them. This slide mentions the most important ones, in fact. So it's improved pastures with dispersed trees, cotton carrier grasses, which is not directly maybe silvopastoral, but which is an important component when you're looking at energy, increasing availability of energy in feed, protein banks, and live fences. Okay, I will not go into detail, but this is some, and another, and this is also not really typical, not especially typical for silvopastoral systems, but we also added as an important option, electric fences, which are very helpful and very useful for improved pasture management. So the characteristics, as I said, we have we distinguish two different farms, which represent most of the farmers. A small and a medium. Well, with the size, livestock average 20 heads of cattle for the small farmers and 60 for the medium. We're talking about Central America. We're not talking East Africa here, for example, or Asia, right? Milk production, as I mentioned, is relatively low. Pasture area for the small ones, 10 hectares. For the medium, 40 or 30 in improved system. I'll come to that later. With about 50% of improved silvopasture systems and about 25 to 30% of for the small farmers and about 25 to 30% for the medium farmers. Okay, and then manure use. Traditionally, manure is not really applied to pastures in Nicaragua, but for the improved options, the manure is used for cotton carrier grasses. Okay. Feed baskets, so it's they change also according to the options compared to the SPA, the silvopasture scenario compared with the business as usual scenario. And then, as you can see, usually small farmers, they have only traditional grasses. Medium farmers, they have some improved grasses or some introduced grasses. And then in the options, we added a tree component in the form of gliricidia and Napier grass, or increasing proportions of Napier grass as a energy crop, energy, yeah, and increasing also the proportion of improved improved pastures, yeah. Okay, so some impacts, as you can see, in the improved scenarios or the options with the improved silvopastoral techniques or options, the carrying capacity in production improves by 30 to 50%, which potential, and also the land requirement decreases, so that potentially frees up land by up to 25%, which is very interesting if you realize that those areas and this region where we did this analysis is in fact is a buffer zone around natural reserves. And also the water requirement per kg of milk decreases by half. Okay, some other impacts, the emissions, greenhouse gas emissions, intensity, also, well, the total increase is increased because productivity, of course, increases. But intensity decreases if you look at emissions per kg of milk. And there is a positive change in carbon stocks because of the introduction of silvopasture systems now, and also improved forages, improved grasses. So this, yeah, okay, I think I mentioned this. Yeah, and even the sequestration in small farms and medium farms to a large extent compensates for the emissions. Looking at economic feasibility, well, I just want to stress here that of course the implementation of these options will take some time, so you won't have the full extra income from these interventions. We in our study we assume that we'll have a full extra income after 3 years. Investment life will be 12 years, which I already mentioned, and a discount rate of 10%. And then we find a payback period for the small farms after 7 years and for the medium farms after 4 years. So after that, the system becomes more profitable than the traditional system. When you're looking at the risk and sensitivity, then we found that the milk-related indicators, so both productivity and prices, have a higher impact on profitability of these investments than meat. And also that the price-related indicators, or the price of milk, price of live weight, or of meat, as you wish, have a greater impact than the productivity indicators, and that the profitability of these investments is most affected by the milk price, followed by live weight price, milk productivity, and live weight gain. And this is it. So, thank you.
Perfect. So, are there questions?
Well, hey, my name is Laura Reinfels. I'm working with the Leibniz Institute for Agricultural Engineering and Bioeconomy. And I was wondering how you have compared these farms, because in my experience in Colombia, they were like quite different, like having one system that is similar to another system is not existent. So I was wondering how you did.
Sorry, similar to
the other system. So you have a farm like with different systems, like not having a complete farm with intensive silvopasture systems, but also having like here 1 hectare of system, and the farms were quite heterogeneous. Is it the same in Nicaragua?
I'm not sure if I got your question right, but you know what we did is the systems, the improved systems. It is an ex ante analysis. So I mean they exist, yeah, but we did not really assess those systems. What we did is we made a comparison. We did an ex ante assessment of both the business as usual system and the system with improved options. And then we used data that we know from other or from similar systems, in fact, to do this analysis. You understand what I mean? So we did not really go to the to both business and usual farms and farms with improved silvopasture systems and doing that analysis. We did not do that, you know. So it is an ex ante. It's a feasibility study, you know, based on data that we think are quite reliable. But it's ex ante. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
I didn't get that point, I guess.
Yeah.
There's time for one more question.
Thank you. Yes, I'm looking at the economic analysis you did, the economic analysis. For the traditional group, I think the internal rate of return was just 9%. The internal rate of return was 9%. And I was wondering, how did you value the other aspects of the enterprise, the non-market, like the drop-ins and other things in this analysis? In terms of estimating the benefits associated with the business as usual situation, did you also include the value of the non-market aspect of the enterprise, like the drop-ins and other things? You don't get my question? What accounts for this, the low internal rate of return?
Okay, which variables? Okay, okay. So, I mean, it was what we considered was the extra, of course, firstly the increased cash flow because of the improved increased income because of high productivity, right? The extra costs because now you have to maintain these systems, these options, so that it brings an extra cost. We also took into account the depreciation because we assume that the investment life is 12 years. So after 12 years, if you need to in fact renew many of the options, maybe not so much the trees, but the grass and well, also the electric fences and everything. So that's what we took into account, and that's. I don't know if that answers your question, Niels. Maybe you want to.
Question was: did you also consider soil fertility, reduced drought risk, costs, all these things which are not directly? But you didn't. You said for the time being, we just consider what we can actually count as cash flow out of that.
Yeah.
The other parts are a little bit in the green analysis. So you have the environmental aspects separately. Because, I mean, you can put any kind of values in it and it would still be very speculative. So for this one, they stuck to the basics, which they can see.
Well,
it's also to convince farmers because that's what they see directly.
Yeah, but we looked at the end balance. So the effect on the end balance, and you can monetize that somehow, right? Of course, the end balance in improved systems is better than in the traditional systems, but it's still, and I did not present that for time reasons, maybe I should have, but it might, you know, it is still, might still be negative, you know, the end balance, even for an improved system. So, and then you can monetize that difference, or maybe you can just use the fertilizer price or something, which is not completely correct, but at least it gives an indication, right? Yeah.
Due to the time, I will now stop the discussion. When there are more questions, more details needed, please also use the breaks, use the evening, use tomorrow to put further questions. Thank you very much. So with the next presentation of Louis Philipp Schwarze, we will move back to the African continent, to East Africa, to Kenya. Yeah, with innovations to address sustainability trade-offs.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here today. My name is Louis Schwarze. I'm a PhD student at the University of Hohenheim at the chair of social and institutional change in agriculture. Yeah, and this I would like to present some results of the first stage of my PhD thesis, which I'm doing in Kenya together with the University of Nairobi and Kenya Agricultural Livestock Research Institute, and I choose the title Screening for Innovations that address sustainability trade-offs in Kenyan livestock systems. Yes, you can see some systems here. I can already say we looked at these three sectors of dairy, beef, and poultry systems, which are also mainly affected by the ongoing livestock revolution, the rapid increase of animal or consumption of animal products, especially now starting in African countries. But first of all, I want to highlight the importance of the livestock sector for food system sustainability and sustainability of, in general, the sustainability development goals, which has also been highlighted. If you look at the planetary boundaries, we can really see that all those boundaries which have been transgressed are livestock is a main factor. If we look at biodiversity, land use change, climate change, nutrient flows, and so on. But it has been highlighted before, so I think it is well known. And then, of course, the livestock revolution, as I said, we can see here between 2015 and 2050, the consumption across many products is about to triple in sub-Saharan Africa. And that also leads to transformation of livestock systems, intensification, scaling up, consolidation, internationalization, yes. And there are opportunities and challenges, or trade-offs between opportunities and challenges. The challenges have been popularly coined the long shadow of livestock in one FAO publication. And here I want to show some of the opportunities, which are economic growth, poverty reduction, and employment creation, especially for smallholder farmers, or their benefits are there the largest, and better access to animal protein and micronutrients through higher consumption of animal products, which is still fairly low in many African countries. But there are, of course, many risks. Of course, the environmental risks, pollution, environmental pollution, biodiversity loss, land degradation, but also animal health concerns, animal welfare concerns, overnutrition, food losses, and food safety, and also socioeconomic problems like marginalization of smallholders social conflicts in pastoral systems, and also gender equality. And yeah, it is in front of the background of I think the topic of our Troppentag, the food system transformation, and also the Food System Summit, which has highlighted the importance to address the trade-offs and synergies, and foster the synergies, address the trade-offs between the sustainability goals. There's quite a body of literature on that, and also a literature on the livestock trade-offs or livestock sustainability trade-offs. And it has been highlighted that it's important to address these trade-offs. And recently, especially in the two publications which I've cited here, the role of innovations has been highlighted to address these trade-offs. And innovations in the food system literature is quite a wide concept, including novel technologies, novel processes, novel institutions, but also social behaviors or norms which need to change so the food system can transform. And innovations normally have a positive impact. We can imagine it has a narrow impact or narrow focus, contributing mainly to economic growth, but could also be a different focus on other sustainability dimensions. And then they could also have trade-offs or co-benefits, unintended negative trade-offs or co-benefit on other sustainability dimensions. And then there are, of course, also the trade-offs in the livestock systems or the livestock food systems. Yeah, and one challenge with innovations that are sustainable or that enhance sustainability, which is not economic sustainability, is that there are lacks of incentive for users to adopt them and the agricultural innovation system to provide them and develop them. So there is a major market failure here. And in Kenya, it's a very interesting case because we have so many innovations in the livestock sector, and it has yet not been seen how they impact various sustainability dimensions. That was our goal for this study. We also looked at the trade-offs of the livestock systems, which, however, I choose to drop for this presentation. And I wanted to focus mainly on the innovations, how the innovations reduce or reinforce the sustainability trade-offs that exist in the livestock systems. We also looked at, I think, the intensive, semi-intensive, and extensive livestock systems. So we used a fairly simple method, like in line of the rapid rural appraisal, because other approaches to trade-off analysis and sustainability assessment are quite complicated. So we adopted existing indicator frameworks, the FAO-SAFA framework and the Sustainability Intensification Assessment Framework to the livestock sector. Then we conducted expert workshops with 49 experts from Cairo, the county livestock departments, university, in those 4 workshops in each of the 3 sectors. And we did participatory matrix scoring, which admittedly is a simple approach, but it allowed us to cover all those dimensions and systems. And first we rated the relevance of the sustainability indicators, then rated the impacts in the livestock systems, listed the innovations to collect all, or that was the stock taking in the end, to collect all innovations in the livestock sector. And then we rated their impact on the sustainability dimensions. And the analysis was mainly descriptive. So what we found in total were 100 innovations. However, I have to say that the definition of the innovation was largely left to the experts, defining the innovation, as I said, novel, technique, process, institution, and so on. But they were the ones to tell you, is it an innovation or is it not an innovation? And we found, interestingly, that many of the listed innovations have a fairly low adoption rate, or 2/3 have an adoption rate lower than 30%. We found a high importance of the county governments in providing the innovations, and research centers and Cairo were only in a lower role. Many of the innovations were also centered on the farming sector, which may, however, also be due to our focus on agricultural experts. And now looking at which sustainability dimensions were addressed, we found that mainly the economic dimensions, here mainly productivity, were addressed, and closely related innovations to that, which were resilience and animal health. issues which also contribute to the economic performance of the farms, but other dimensions which are less related, like greenhouse gas emissions or land degradation or animal welfare, were less or clearly less or almost not addressed by these innovations. And we also found that environmental innovations or innovations addressing environmental sustainability were least adopted. And we found, on the other hand, that very few innovations create trade-offs, meaning that many innovations have a narrow focus and no trade-offs, but some very dominating or farming system dominating innovations like intensive husbandry practices like cage farming or feedlots, exotic breeds, privatization of communal land, antibiotics have trade-offs clearly, and some innovations were there which address trade-offs like biogas and manure, alternative feeds, collective resource management systems. I don't name them all. Our first conclusion to the methodological approach, of course, it is a simple approach, but it gave us the opportunity to get a good overview. We got ordinal trade-off values, but it neglects some of the interactions between the goals and the tacit dimensions of some innovations, or it neglects some gradual innovations. So far, most innovations that are focused on productivity in terms of intensification or sustainable intensification predominate the development pathways of the livestock systems, leading to trade-offs on neglected dimensions. And there's therefore need for innovations that complement this intensification or sustainable intensification innovations in other sustainability dimensions. And therefore, we could do more research or policies, or policies could be bundling of social technical innovation was proposed by some authors. Complementary public regulation was or is often demanded for, and also mission-oriented innovation systems, and in overall more active management of the innovations and contextual factors that create incentives with holistic focus could greatly enhance the sustainability of Kenyan and African livestock systems.
Very much for the talk. We have time for 1 or 2 short questions and short answers. Yes, please.
Did I see it right that you didn't consider feed innovations? If you didn't, feed makes 50 to 70% of cost of livestock production. So if you haven't, then I would recommend to do that.
I did consider them. They are considered, but there are some methodological challenges in that, of course. What is an innovation? Yeah, I said I left it to the experts. So they of course, we did not consider every variety of improved fodder, but we maybe bulk them as improved fodder varieties counted as one innovation, but they were considered. No, not not necessarily. They were Cairo people. They are farming system experts, I would say. Yeah, from Cairo centers. So normally they do animal production. Actually, we didn't really go to veterinary people. We did go to agriculturalists. Yes.
One more question. Here, maybe we check online in the chat. Okay, so I think the last one is related to the last presentation. Did you consider the scalability and long-term sustainability of any identified innovations?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, there are some interesting points I did not mention. Yeah, again, going back to what is an innovation. Of course, many of those technologies, like artificial insemination, were also captured. They are around for, I think, since many decades, but they have still not been successfully scaled. Okay, that can also be up for discussion, but yes, so I think that through the adoption rate, it's somehow covered, but we did not specifically use the scalability or scaling concept for measuring the innovations. And the other aspect was the long-term sustainability. Yeah, that is also not really distinguished between long-term and short-term sustainability, but I would be interested for the argument why the difference should be so importantly that it yeah needs to be focused on specifically. Yeah, I have not really thought about it, how that could be maybe, yeah, could be included. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Again, an applause. The last presenter, Stefan Burkhardt, and profitability analysis of silvopastoral system in Colombia. Thank you.
Thanks for all who have not left yet. I know it's late. And I'm the last one today with a similar topic that my colleague Rein already presented, this time from Colombia. It's a profitability analysis of not one, it's two silvopastoral systems in Colombia, where we included both economic and environmental benefits. Not all of the environmental benefits, but at least some. I'm presenting this on behalf of a colleague of mine, Dani Sandoval, who can't be here today. My name is Stefan Burkhardt. I work as Rein also for the Alliance of Biodiversity in CIAT, but I'm based in Cali, Colombia. So, as probably most of you know, beef, dairy, and dual-purpose cattle systems can have very strong impacts on the environment. For example, greenhouse gas emissions, deforestation, land degradation, and so on, and so on, and so on. And over the last, let's say, 10, 15 years, a shift in the policies has happened, above all in Latin America. And they are now focusing a lot on sustainable intensification of these cattle systems. And a large part of that is aimed through innovations in terms of feeding strategies. And among them, at least for the time being, the silver bullets are silvopastoral systems, as they have many different benefits. For example, they can help to reduce methane emissions. They can provide microclimatic regulation, carbon sequestration, and so on, and also increase biodiversity. So they're very important for most of the governments in Latin America. They're very important for research centers as ours. And against this background, let's say our technical colleagues, our agronomists and environmental scientists, over the last years have increasingly, in an increasing way, conducted trials to test different feeding innovations, and among them silvopastoral systems. What we see from those evaluations is that they increase productivity quite a lot, but they are also much more expensive for a producer. And at the same time, we see that adoption rates are still low. So we ask, okay, how can we promote these systems without knowing what they bring in terms of economic benefits to a producer? So against this background, the objective of my colleague's study is to estimate the economic and environmental values of implementing silvopastoral systems instead of an already improved grass monoculture. So what did we do? In a first step, we did an economic evaluation, which is based on a discounted cash flow model. to estimate different economic indicators like the net present values, internal rates of returns, benefit cost ratios. And then in the end, we also conducted a quantitative risk analysis through a Monte Carlo simulation. So once we had these values, we estimated also the methane emission reduction under each of the different evaluated scenarios. And through a market price method, also put a value to that. And that included, and then included that into another economic analysis. And then a last step, we also wanted to have a look into the microclimatic regulation. So we wanted to see actually if a farmer would establish a silvopasture system, how much shade can this generate? And what would be the cost if that farmer, instead of having a silvopasture system, would need to establish a shadow mesh to reach the same level of shade? Just to know about this economic benefit. Here's a little confusion. I think something went wrong, but here's basically an overview on the different scenarios or technologies we evaluated. So on the left side, you can see two grass monoculture systems. One is called M. Toledo, the other one M. Cayman, which is related to the technologies we evaluated. So the M. Toledo is a grass monoculture system with Urucloa brisanta, cultivar Toledo. And the M. Cayman system is a Urucloa hybrid monoculture system. The hybrid is called Cayman. And then we contrasted this with the same, but including in each case a legume, which is called Leucaena leucocephala, which is a tree legume which can grow quite high. And then, yeah, before I go forward, the data we obtained actually from field trials, controlled trials in Colombia at our main campus in Palmira, which were conducted by our technical colleagues. So all the technical data came from there. So as I mentioned, first we did an economic evaluation. As you can see on the upper side, the pure economic benefit of the four different scenarios. As you can see, compared with the monoculture system, the economic indicators improve in the silvopasture system, but they're yet very low. So we were wondering, us as economists, we're wondering, how is that? Why is that happening? From previous evaluations, we knew that even if you don't consider environmental benefits, normally just the productivity increases already lead to very positive economic indicators. So what's happening? So we went back to our technical colleagues, and then they told us, okay, something happened, but the life weight gains were not as high as expected in the silvopasture systems. Even though we had similar technologies before, they were about 1/3 of the normal values. So we decided to anyway use these values. And as you can see, even though they are not very profitable, the economic indicators increase and are becoming better when Leucaena is being established. And then in the second part here, you can see if we include the avoided methane emissions, the economic value of these avoided methane emissions into the economic evaluation, these economic indicators further improve. So the more economic, the more environmental value the system generates, the more profitable it's getting, right? And then, as mentioned, we did a risk analysis to compare how the risk of economic loss is decreasing from one step to another. So as you can see in the two monoculture systems, there's quite a lot of risk of achieving a negative net present value, which is then partially reduced when only the economic benefits of the silvopasture systems are considered, and then much more reduced when also the methane emission reductions are considered as an economic value. And here you can see these values. So in terms of methane emissions reductions, we put an average price per ton of CO2 equivalent of $42 more or less. which was an average of different marketing systems for CO2 equivalent emissions. And that has resulted then in a total benefit per hectare of about $24 that was included into the economic evaluation, which doesn't seem that high. But if you consider that many farmers don't have the financial means of adopting such a system, which is quite expensive, it still does make a difference. And then in terms of the microclimatic regulation, so the shade coverage was quite a lot. It was about 60%, I think, if I'm not wrong, of the area. And that was valued annually at about $2,000. So if a farmer doesn't invest in shadow mesh, but invests in a silvopasture system of that type, then he saves basically $2,000. So we see that although the life weight gains were so low for the silvopasture systems, that the change from a monoculture to a silvopasture system still results in improvement in terms of economic and environmental indicators. However, which is good, of course, because this can be an incentive for producers to adopt these technologies. But the economic part is not the only thing that is important in terms of the adoption of these technologies. It's also important to strengthen the extension system, to provide technical assistance, because establishing a silvopasture system requires a different knowledge set. And many producers don't have that. Many of them aren't even aware of the technologies that exist to adopt a silvopasture system. And it's also important, of course, to generate access to finance, because as I mentioned, the establishment of such a system is quite expensive. So it's nothing that, let's say, a small or medium-sized producer can just pay out of his pocket. And if there's no credit line that's supporting the establishment of a silvopasture system, they will never do it, even though it's profitable, because they just can't. So that's all I have for today, I think. Well, this is just a summary of the main findings. Please let me know if you have any questions.
First question.
Hello. Hi, I'm Janelle Sylvester, also from the Alliance of Biodiversity and CIAT. Thank you for the very nice presentation. I'm wondering, what is the minimum number of trees needed to be considered a silvopastoral system? And as well, in this study, did it consider different arrangements, like living fences versus portero versus strips versus, yeah.
So in this particular case, it was a semi-intensive system with 2,000 leucaena trees per hectare. But your first question is actually, I find it very interesting, because I think that's not very clear yet. What different types of arrangements are considered silvopasture systems? Scatter trees, then you have the intensive systems, then you have like this one, the semi-intensive systems, then you have living fences and so on. So there's a lot of discussion about that, and that makes these type of analyses also quite complex. And the things you can provide to the farmers as well, because I mean, to obtain these results, they basically need to establish the system like we did. But if they understand something different of a silvopasture system, but rely on our figures, then yeah, the results of course also change. Yeah, so.
Thank you. Very interesting, and I agree.
Thank you. Stefan, are you in the same project with the previous presentation from Nicaragua? Is it the same project that's doing in Colombia here? Okay, because I wanted to link one question which might go to the other group and this one. Maybe let me first understand if your team is composed of different disciplinary background, so that, you know, some limitations could be avoided by fulfilling this. For example, the forage agronomy team the livestock team might help a lot in improving the models. For example, you talked about the importance of legumes in terms of shade formation to the pasture. Whether the nitrogen fixation is more important than the shade, for example, can be analyzed by the team from agronomy. I don't know.
No, I just to clarify, I wasn't talking about shade provision for the pasture. I was talking about shade provision for the animals.
For the animals, for the beef, or okay.
As microclimatic regulation against heat stress.
Heat stress for the animals. Okay, thank you. The other thing is, could you? I mean, did you also try to analyze the amount of greenhouse gas emissions per unit of meat or milk produced in a system, so that you may come up with a very concrete, for example.
We actually have those figures, and I didn't present them here because it would be too long. I also don't have them in memory, but we published this study actually a couple of weeks ago in Helion. So if you're interested, I can share the link with you. And there you can find all the technical indicators, the assumptions we have, and also what you asked. Yeah. And also a very nice description of the different treatments.
Hello, my name is Kanzorik from Mongolian University of Life Sciences from Mongolia. And I have a question about this economic analysis is very kind of negative in terms of net income is kind of benefit. So I was wondering, because the silvopastoral system seems to be supporting the ecosystem services like this shadow creation and others, also the reduction of methane. So is there any connection between this improving or supporting ecosystem services to the productivity of the livestock?
No.
And just to clarify my question, because it's like meat and milk and hide, skin, such type of products may be affected by such kind of positive impact, but from the economic analysis, it seems like not so much.
No, so as I mentioned, we were actually surprised about the low life weight gains in that case, because from similar setups, we had actually life weight gains that were like 3.5 times higher. And of course, if you have those life weight gains, like in previous analyses, all the economic indicators under the silvopasture system also improve quite a lot, you can imagine, you know. And then they become very competitive compared with the monoculture system. But in this case, we could only show that there is an improvement, you know, and we didn't want to model additional life weight gains into this analysis, because we wanted to be like, we wanted to work with the data we had. Yeah. But normally, yeah, we see that that life weight gains improve and also stocking rates improve. And that we saw also here, I didn't mention that. So under the monoculture system, we had a stocking rate of 3 tropical livestock units of 450 kilos. And under the silvopasture systems, we had 4, which is 1 animal more in the same space.
So maybe we can check if there is an online question as the last one.
The question here is, did you research? Oh, no, there's another one. Are there any success stories or case studies from your research that illustrate the practical benefits and challenges of adopting silvopasture systems in Colombia? There are actually a lot of studies on the practical benefits of silvopasture systems from us and from other institutions like CPAF. And they are very successful also in the field, not only in trials. But as I mentioned, adoption rates are still low, which is mostly linked to these two factors I mentioned, the financial aspects, which is linked to the missing access or availability of credit, and to the knowledge aspects, which is, well, the missing knowledge among farmers or awareness about these types of setups and technologies, and also to the access of seeds, for example, and other inputs. So there's a lot of work to do, but for example, in Colombia, in 2020, a new credit line was launched, which is particularly aimed at establishing silvopasture systems, which I think will make adoption easier and boost it over the next, let's say, 10 years probably. Yeah.
Thank you very much again for the discussion and your questions. At the time, I think I would like to close this session. I think what we get out of all the presentation and questions and discussion is that there are innovations, technologies to improve different livestock systems, be it silvopastoral systems, be it urban livestock production systems, but that there is still a need for research how really these innovations are adopted by the local livestock keepers. So still a lot of work for us to do, a lot of research, and yeah, thank you very much again for your questions and your participation. And I hope to see some of you or all of you again for the poster session this evening. Enjoy your break. Yeah, would be a good idea, yeah, maybe to share, yeah.
We don't need this anymore.